I still remember the exact sound the oat milk made as it splashed into my coffee. That quiet swirl of cream softened the bitterness, just like I'd done every morning for over a decade. It was a small ritual, a moment of control in a life that often demanded too much of me and gave too little back. The office was still waking up, humming with faint keyboard clicks and distant chatter. I was alone in the break room when the door swung open. In walked Ryan. Cole. He didn't look at me, not a nod, not a glance, just passed by like I was part of the furniture. The son of the man who built the company from the ground up, now parading around with the title CEO like it came in a birthday gift box. His tailored suit probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, and yet, for all the polish, there was something hollow behind his eyes. No depth, no weight. Lily, he said, turning suddenly, my office. Now, it wasn't a request. It wasn't even rude. It was cold, like pressing ice against the back of your neck. I followed, setting my coffee down untouched. My pulse had already begun to quicken. I wasn't new. I wasn't unproven. I have given this company 11 years, built the client services department from the ground up. I'd negotiated more contracts than Ryan had probably read. I'd mentored his favorite analysts, stayed late when everyone else clocked out, taken client calls through the grief of my divorce and the flu and everything in between, but none of that mattered. Not now. He didn't sit. He didn't offer a chair. He didn't even pretend to be interested in a conversation. You're fired. My brain didn't register the words right away. I'm sorry. I blinked, my voice tight. We don't need lazy people dragging this place down, he said, flipping casually through a file on his desk, like he was reading the day's lunch menu. I just stared at him. My throat went dry, my heart thudding so loud I couldn't hear the hum of the air vent anymore. Lazy? He didn't wait for a response. You can collect your things, leave effective immediately. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. I wanted to shout, to throw that folder back in his face, to remind him who built the very processes his executive assistant now followed. But instead, I did something else. I smiled. Not a warm smile, not a broken one either, a deliberate, cold, dignified smile, the kind you give when you know the person in front of you has no idea what they've just done. Understood, I said. Have a nice day, Ryan. I turned and walked out, head high, limbs shaking. As I passed the open workspace, a few of my teammates looked up. They felt something was off. Some even stood. I gave a subtle shake of the head. Don't. Don't make this harder. They understood. I packed my desk in silence, the room around me quiet like a church before a funeral. My fingers moved on autopilot, but my mind was racing. Not with rage, not yet, but with a haunting, simple question. As I drove home, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I stared ahead, the city a blur outside the windows, and all I could think about was how 11 years of loyalty could vanish with 3 syllables. You're fired. No warning, no cause, no dignity. It wasn't the job I mourned. It was the years, the birthdays I missed. During the holidays, I worked. The child's recital I skipped to finalize a budget report. The calls I took while lying alone in bed, tears still wet from signing divorce papers. I had poured myself into that place, poured until I was nearly empty, and now discarded like I never mattered. But still, beneath the grief, beneath the disbelief, there was something else beginning to simmer. Not quite angry, not yet. Curiosity. because something didn't feel right. Ryan's confidence, his certainty hadn't come from logic. It came from ignorance. And ignorance always costs more than it thinks. The apartment was too quiet. No emails, no meetings, no pings, just me and the echo of everything I used to be by 9 o'clock a.m. on a weekday. I stood in my kitchen, still dressed from the office, my work tote sitting untouched on the floor where I had dropped it the night before. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, warm and bright, a cruel contrast to how cold I felt inside. I hadn't slept, not really. My body had shut down for a few hours out of necessity, but my mind kept replaying every second of that final walk through the office. 11 years? 11 years of building something from the ground up, brick by brick, night by night. And in the end, I left like a ghost. No send off, no handshake, just an empty box and a hollow goodbye. But that wasn't what kept me awake. What haunted me was the way Ryan had said it. So flat, so certain. No hesitation, no remorse. Like he'd been waiting for that moment. And the timing, God, the timing was strange. We were just days away from finalizing the Kingswell deal. A 6-month negotiation, countless hours, cultural nuances, legal gymnastics, all of it hanging on the final review meeting I'd scheduled for Friday. And no, out. Had he even looked at the paperwork? Had he read the clause? There were layers to this, and Ryan didn't strike me as the kind of man who bothered with layers. He made moves like he was playing chess blindfolded, fast, reckless, and convinced he was still in control. At 9:08 a.m., my phone buzzed. No number. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the decline button. I didn't have it in me to hear another corporate brush off or fake apology, but something pulled at me, curiosity. Again, he answered, Lily, it's Mr. My breath caught. The voice was unmistakable, measured, commanding. But this time there was something else in it. Strain. I just walked into the office, he said, pausing. I could hear papers rustling in the background, fast and frantic. Why the hell did you pack up and leave? I blinked, stunned. Your son fired me? I said quietly. He went silent. I heard a sharp inhale on the other end. What? Yesterday, I confirmed. Told me I was lazy, said I wasn't needed anymore. There was a long, loaded pause. Then Mr. Cole's voice dropped into something colder. Did he even read your contract? I furrowed my brow. What are you talking about? He's supposed to finalize the Kingswell deal today, right? Yes, the meeting's at 11. Jesus Christ. The shuffle of papers intensified, then a loud thud, like a binder hitting the desk hard. Then came the words that shifted everything. Your contract has a clause, he said, and I could practically hear his teeth grinding. One I personally added after the Steel Ridge debacle. You're not just managing the Kingswell deal, you are the only authorized negotiator tied to it. Legal, ethical, logistical. No one else can finalize it without you. That clause, I remembered it. It was buried on page 7, sandwiched between routine non-disclosure language and client-specific confidentiality rules. No one ever questioned it because no one ever expected it to be relevant. Until now, Brennan read it. He had fired the one person who could close the biggest deal this company had seen in 5 years, and he didn't even know it. Mr. Cole didn't say goodbye. He just hung up, and the silence that followed was louder than any shout. I sat still, phone still pressed to my ear, the weight of it all sinking in. My untouched coffee had gone cold. My career, which had seemed dead 12 hours ago, now had a pulse again. But it was more than that. It had power. I leaned back on my couch and laughed. just once, bitter, breathless. Um, Ryan thought he could erase me, thought he could reshuffle the board and pretend he understood the game, but he hadn't even read the rule book. For the first time since yesterday, I didn't feel devastated. Felt dangerous. Um, I didn't know what would happen next. A part of me wanted to get dressed and storm back into that office just to watch the chaos, just to watch him squirm. But another part of me, the one that had carried this company for years without ever asking for credit, knew better. Let them come to me, and they did. At 10:13 a.m., my phone started buzzing again. First it was Ryan, then the front desk, then someone from legal, then accounting. My screen lit up like it was New Year's Eve. I didn't answer a single one. And when I finally opened voicemail, there it was. Lily, hi. Uh, it's Ryan. Listen, there was a bit of a misunderstanding yesterday. I may have acted too fast. We need you back in the office today. It's urgent. Please call me. No apology, just panic wrapped in performative civility. I sipped my cold coffee and smiled to myself, while him sweat. By 10:32 a.m., I'd stopped counting the missed calls. Then came one I hadn't seen in years. Nicole, a voice from the past, one of the few people in that building who truly knew me before titles and power got in the way. I picked up on the second ring. Lily, she whispered, almost breathless. You won't believe what's happening here. Try me. Mr. Cole he walked into the main meeting room, Kingswell contract in hand, and asked one question in front of the whole executive team. Did you read this before firing Lily? I smiled slowly. He brought the contract? Oh, yeah, Nicole said. And Ryan? He tried to bluff, said something vague about restructuring and streamlining roles, but Mr. Cole didn't blink. He flipped to the clause. You know, that clause, the one you never stopped talking about. I remember we all do, except apparently Ryan, she exhaled. Lily? He looked pale, like actually pale. He realized in real time that he's the reason the Kingswell deal is about to walk. What did Mr. Cole say? Nicole hesitated, then delivered the line like it was gospel. Hmm. He said, if this deal falls through, your position here becomes negotiable. I closed my eyes and let the words sink in. The power shift had begun. It's my first crack, Nicole added. I don't know what you're planning, but whatever it is, you've got the upper hand now. After we hung up, I didn't move right away. I just stood by the window and watched the city breathe beneath me, its rhythm steady, indifferent to boardroom politics and bruised egos. And in that stillness, I realized something. I had a choice now, not just about going back, about how I went back, under what terms. This wasn't about revenge. I didn't want to humiliate Ryan the way he'd tried to humiliate me. That wasn't who I was. What I wanted, what I needed was accountability, clarity, proof that my years of work weren't just worth something, but that I had the right to define how I continued to give them. I picked up my phone and began typing. Mr. Calm, I appreciate your message. I'm considering returning to finalize the Kingswell deal, but only under specific conditions. Before anything else, I'd like to speak with you directly, privately. I hit send. Then I changed out of my pajamas. If I was going to return, it wouldn't be through the back door. At 12:04 p.m., I walked through the front lobby of the company like a guest, not a ghost. The receptionist's eyes widened the moment she saw me. Miss Harris, Lily, she stammered. Mr. Cole is expecting you. Right this way. As I followed her through the hall, the energy in the office changed. Heads turned, conversations stopped, people watched. The woman who had been fired yesterday was back and walking like she hadn't missed a step. Mr. Cole was already standing at the door to his office. He didn't smile. Lily, he said, nodding. I nodded back but didn't offer my hand. He didn't expect it. Inside, his office was exactly as I remembered it. Books neatly stacked, blinds half drawn, the weight of legacy thick in the air. We both sat, a pause stretching between us. Then he exhaled. I made a mistake, he began. A big one. I gave Ryan too much authority too fast. I thought it would help him grow. Instead, he burned bridges he hadn't even learned how to build. Said nothing, let the silence speak for me. What he did to you was disrespectful and reckless, Mr. Cole continued. He jeopardized a deal we've worked over half a year to secure. I know, I said quietly, because I built it. He nodded, eyes steady. I read the clause again this morning. Every word. You have full legal autonomy over the Kingswell account. Without your presence, it can't be closed. There it was, not just an admission of fault, but of need. I'd like to offer your position back, he said, with full authority to close the deal. Whatever conditions you need, we'll meet them. His voice was calm, sincere, but this wasn't just about the deal. Not anymore. I'll return, I said, but I want everything in writing. Contractually revised. Full autonomy over Kingswell. No interference. Especially not from Ryan. He nodded. Done. And one more thing, I added, my voice firmer. This can't happen again. Not to me, not to anyone. He was quiet for a long moment, then gave a slow, thoughtful nod. You have my word. I stood, and as I turned toward the door, I saw him exhale again, relieved. The hallway was quiet as I stepped out. And down the corridor, pretending to chat with a junior executive, was Ryan. Our eyes locked. Just for a second, I didn't flinch, didn't look away. I walked past him like he wasn't even there. But I saw it the exact moment he realized his control was slipping. Oh. By the time I returned to the building, the tension was almost physical. It sat in the air like a low fog, unspoken but impossible to ignore. Everyone knew I had been fired. And now, everyone would see me walk back in, not as a casualty, but as a condition for survival. I didn't use my old badge. I entered through the front lobby again, my heels tapping with steady resolve against the polished floor. Eyes followed me. Some curious, some nervous. A few, I suspected, relieved. The receptionist stood as I approached. Miss Harris, Mr. Cole said to take you directly to the boardroom. The Kingswell team just arrived. I nodded, offering a tight smile. I didn't come here to make small talk. I came to finish what I started. As I walked past familiar desks and conference rooms, the whispers were already starting. People paused mid-sentence. They turned their chairs. A few even stood. But no one said a word. It was as if the entire company was holding its breath. I entered the boardroom at 1:03 p.m. The room was already set, a pitcher of water, fresh pens, stacks of neatly printed copies of the final proposal, Arabic translation included. I had insisted on that detail months ago. Kingswell appreciated respect, not just results. They wanted someone who understood both language and nuance. And I had. Their CEO, Mr. S., entered the room at 1:30 on the dot. A sharp man with a low voice and a reputation for walking out of any meeting that smelled of disorganization. But when he saw me, his face softened, just slightly. "You remembered," he said in Arabic, glancing at the translated documents. "Respect goes a long way," I replied with a small nod. He smiled, a rare gesture, and just like that, the meeting began. For 2 hours, we walked through every term, every point, every careful arrangement I'd spent months stitching together. There were no missteps, no hesitations. Every detail was solid and airtight. When we stood to sign, Mr. S extended his hand across the table without pause. "A pleasure," he said. "Finally, someone who means what they say." We shook hands. Flashbulbs didn't go off. No one clapped. But I didn't need any of that. The deal was done. As the Kingswell team exited, Mr. Cole stepped forward, his face more relaxed than I'd seen in years. "You saved us," he said quietly, "and I owe you more than just an apology." I held his gaze. "You owe your company a leader," I replied, "one who knows the difference between power and responsibility." He didn't argue, but the victory was not what lingered with me that day. It was right. He'd been pacing outside the boardroom for most of the meeting, watching me through the glass like a caged animal. He hadn't come in. He hadn't been invited. And when Mr. Cole stepped outside to intercept him, I saw their silhouettes. Ryan gesturing wildly, Mr. Cole unmoved. Then a hand shot up, firm, final. Ryan froze. And when he turned to look inside, his face was a storm of rage, shame, and disbelief. His mouth moved, but he didn't speak. He looked at me, and for the first time since this began, I saw it clearly, was afraid. He walked away without another word. That was the last time I saw him that day. Later that evening, I lingered in the office longer than I should have. Everyone else had gone. The building was quiet, lights low, the city beyond the windows glowing like it didn't know or care what had just happened inside. I stood by the long glass wall of the boardroom, fingers tracing the cool edge of the table where the Kingswell deal had been signed. It was just a deal on paper, but it was also more than that. It was proof that I wasn't just competent, I was essential. Proof that dismissal doesn't equal defeat. And proofs that when you know your worth, you don't have to raise your voice to make it heard. As I turned to leave, I passed by my old office, still empty, the nameplate gone. Not for long, I thought, because tomorrow the rebuilding would begin. But tonight, I let myself breathe. The mood around the office shifted almost immediately after the deal closed. There were smiles again in the break room. People lingered at each other's desks, laughing softly, catching up. It was as if the building had exhaled, finally. Even the hallway lights felt warmer, the way they reflected on the polished floors, no longer sharp, but soft. Mr. Cole had made it clear Ryan was no longer involved in any high-level decisions. Until further notice, he had said, which everyone understood as corporate speak for, he's done. For a while, I let myself believe that might be it. I had faced the storm, survived the fire, and now came the calm. The Kingswell deal hit the industry press within days. Headlines used words like historic, strategic breakthrough, and multinational triumph. They didn't mention me by name, but they didn't have to. Inside the company, everyone knew who had walked that tightrope, who had stitched the fabric of the deal thread by thread. My inbox was filled with quiet congratulations, some from people I hadn't spoken to in years, a few from the junior staff I had once mentored who now reached out with reverence, others from senior managers who, months ago, barely looked up when I spoke in meetings, now praising my composure under pressure. I appreciated the gestures, but I didn't mistake them for loyalty. People in corporate environments know how to shift with the wind. And right now, I was in the direction it blew. Still, I allowed myself the space to enjoy it, to walk into rooms without shrinking, to offer an idea without checking who was listening. But just as the light began to settle on me, shadows crept in. It started small. An expense report from my trip to finalize the Kingswell contract was returned without explanation. Pending approval, the system said, though no one seemed to know who was holding it. Then a project I'd greenlit stalled because my documentation had gone missing. And then the most jarring thing of all, an email I had allegedly sent containing incorrect client details had been flagged by one of our international partners. The only problem, I never sent it. It had come from my address, yes, but not from me. Thankfully, the partner trusted me enough to call before acting on the information, but the seed of doubt had been planted, a seed someone wanted to water. I reported immediately. Our internal systems team ran a check. No breach, no external interference. It appears the login came from inside the building, they said. Same network, same device group, shared workstation, near the break room. That's when the pit formed in my stomach. This wasn't a fluke. It was deliberate. Ryan hadn't stopped. He'd only changed tactics. Where brute force failed, manipulation had begun. This wasn't about firing me anymore. That approach had cost him. Now he wanted something slower, meaner. He wanted to discredit me, make me look sloppy, unstable, overextended. It was sabotage. And I'd seen it before. Back in my first job out of university, I'd worked under a senior director who smiled in every meeting, but quietly cut off resources behind the scenes. People didn't leave because they were fired. They left because they were isolated, pushed out. But I wasn't 22 anymore, and I wasn't going anywhere. So I started documenting everything, every unsigned form, every delayed approval, every email I didn't send. I kept a private log, time-stamped, dated, backed up. I learned long ago that in places like this, emotions can be dismissed. But records? Records be. One afternoon, as I walked past a closed conference room, I heard my name. I paused. Brian's voice, just loud enough. She's unstable. Since she came back, she's been erratic, aggressive. Another voice responded, low, hesitant. I didn't recognize it. Maybe a new exec. But the Kingswell deal. She pulled it off under pressure. Ryan scoffed. She got lucky. We can't build a company on luck. I stayed still for a moment longer, letting the words settle. He was doing it again. Whispers, doubt, poison. But this time, I wouldn't wait for it to spread. This time, I'd meet it head on. The audit began quietly. No announcement, no warning, just a shift in temperature that everyone in the office could feel. Whispers followed people like shadows, documents were suddenly double-checked, meeting invites became vague, and for the first time in weeks, even the managers avoided eye contact when they passed me in the halls. I hadn't asked Mr. Cole to initiate the internal audit, but when he did, I felt something close to relief. I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth. And not just for me, for every employee who had vanished quietly over the past year, the ones no one talked about, the ones I now suspected hadn't left voluntarily at all. A week into the audit, I was summoned. The room they used was a converted storage space, now a kind of temporary war room. Files were stacked high, screens flickered with data trails. A whiteboard mapped login patterns and timestamps like digital footprints across a crime scene. David, the lead auditor, greeted me with a firm nod. Lily, thanks for coming in. We need to walk through a few findings. I sat down, steady, Prepared. He pulled up an email on the screen. This was sent from your account, he said, but we traced it to a shared workstation near the break room. Your credentials were used, manually entered. So someone copied my login. He shook his head. Not a phishing hack. Internal access. It came from inside the building. I folded my arms, the familiar burn of betrayal returning. Not as fire, but as focus. I reported this when it happened. I said. David nodded. Yes. And we found more. Emails, edited, sign-offs removed, even your draft spreadsheets overwritten from external logins, always trace back to the same pattern, shared machines, logins that shouldn't be connected to your work. My breath. Ryan, I asked. David hesitated, then leaned forward. We've identified unusual activity linked to his executive assistant's login. Several of the sabotaged files were accessed minutes after she used her credentials. I sat still. We're not drawing final conclusions yet, he added carefully. But we are presenting everything to Mr. Cole directly. He wants full transparency. I looked him in the eye, then I'll be there. David blinked. That's not required. I will be there, I said, calm but firm. If my name's in the file, I want to look every person in that room in the eye when the truth comes out. He didn't argue. The night before the audit presentation, I barely slept. Not because I was afraid, because I was ready. Had let too many things go silent for too long in my career. I wouldn't make that mistake again. The next morning, the executive boardroom felt different, heavier. Mr. Cole stood by the windows, arms folded, his face unreadable. David entered next, along with two of his auditors. Then the door opened, and Ryan walked in, 10 minutes late, phone in hand, arrogance trailing behind him like a cologne. He paused the moment he saw me seated at the table. She's not on the audit committee, he snapped, confused. Mr. Cole didn't turn. She's here at my request. Ryan shifted in place, clearly unprepared. This is supposed to be confidential. Then you should have thought about that before using company systems to fabricate emails, I said, voice cool, even. He scoffed. That's ridiculous. David didn't hesitate. We traced multiple login attempts tied to your assistant's account, all linked to irregularities. Emails, reports, altered data. The pattern is clear. Ryan's mask cracked. Slight. You're reaching. She's just bitter about being let go. I turned to him, meeting his eyes. You didn't let me go, Ryan. You tried to erase me, and you almost cost this company the biggest deal in 5 years doing it. Mr. Cole finally stepped forward, quiet, heavy with disappointment. I gave you a chance, he said. More than one. And you've used every one of them to undermine people who were actually trying to build something here. Ryan faltered. This isn't what you think. No. Mr. Cole interrupted. It's worse. The silence that followed wasn't loud, it was absolute. And in that stillness, Ryan realized there was no spinning this. Mr. Cole turned to David. The board will review the full report. Until then, Ryan, you are suspended, effective immediately. Ryan opened his mouth, probably to protest, but no sound came. He looked at me one last time. This time, not with anger or defiance, but disbelief, like he had finally understood that none of his tricks, none of his shortcuts could save him now. He walked out of the room in silence. I didn't move, didn't smile. I just breathed. For the first time in months, I could breathe. Mr. Cole turned to me. I failed him, he said softly, as a leader, maybe even as a father. You can't lead someone who refuses to grow, I said, but you can still lead the company. He looked at me and nodded slowly, and for the first time in a long time, I believed he would. 2 weeks passed. The echoes of the audit still lingered in the halls, not in raised voices or official memos, but in the way people moved, slower, warier. Conversations paused when someone entered a room. Smiles returned, but with caution. Ryan hadn't been seen since that morning. The rumors came quickly. Suspension, followed by a quiet termination. No statement, no dramatic farewell. Just a name removed from the internal directory and an empty office left untouched, like the air still hadn't figured out how to fill the space. The final report confirmed what we already knew. He hadn't just sabotaged me, he had manipulated internal systems, tampered with communications, and compromised multiple client accounts to preserve his illusion of power. The board moved fast. The evidence was overwhelming. There were no lawsuits, no press, just an unceremonious erasure. And somehow, I didn't feel triumphant. Felt steady, like I had walked through fire and come out not unburned, but stronger. A few days later, I was called to Mr. Cole's office. He didn't keep me waiting. He sat at his desk with a closed folder in front of him. I've been thinking a lot about what comes next, he began, about what kind of leadership this company needs moving forward. I didn't speak. I could feel the shift in the room before he even opened the folder. You've shown more leadership in the last month than most executives show in an entire career, he said. You've protected the company. You anchored the Kingswell deal. You kept your head while someone tried to take your name apart piece by piece. He slid the folder across the desk. I opened it. Director of Client Strategy, an executive level position, a seat at the decision-making table, reporting directly to him. I looked up. I didn't ask for this. I know, he said simply. That's why you deserve it. I hesitated. Not because I wasn't ready, but because I was. Oh, if I accept this, I said slowly, I want to say in how we move forward. Not just for me, for everyone. I don't want a title. I want a chance to rebuild the culture. Mr. Cole smiled, not a wide grin, just a slow, approving nod. Ooh, the reality saith true. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. That evening, I sat alone in the temporary office they'd given me. Spare walls, clean desk, blank nameplate. And for a moment, I just stared at that empty plate. I had walked these halls for years, wondering if anyone saw the work I did, the late nights, the quiet crisis management, the ways I made things run without ever needing credit. I had believed silence was the path to peace, but silence had nearly cost me everything. Now I knew better. It wasn't about being loud. It was about being heard and refusing to be erased. Weeks passed, but the shadow of what happened didn't disappear. It simply changed shape. The internal whispers around Ryan faded into legend. His smirk, once a constant presence in meeting rooms and hallways, was now reduced to the occasional punchline or cautionary tale. His office stayed empty for a while. Then one morning, it wasn't a new nameplate, a new executive, the company moved on. But I hadn't forgotten, and I hadn't stopped working. The promotion gave me a new title, yes, but it also gave me something else, reach. I began reopening old channels of communication and reconnecting with teams that had gone quiet. I asked questions people weren't used to executives asking. Why did you leave that role? What resources did you lose last quarter? Who hasn't been heard lately? Didn't just want to rebuild the culture, I wanted to disinfect it. And the more I dug, the more I found employees who had been sidelined after speaking up. Talent was pushed out because they didn't fit into Ryan's vision of success. Initiatives were killed because they came from the wrong voice. It hadn't just been me. It had been systematic. So I started making quiet changes. I created a completely anonymous reporting system, one that didn't route through HR. I reviewed old performance reports for signs of retaliation. I brought back two team leads who had been unjustly pushed aside. No announcement, no politics, just restoration. And I made time for the younger employees too, the ones who looked at me now with cautious admiration. They'd pull me aside after meetings or linger by the elevator. "How did you stay calm through it all?" one asked. "How do you keep showing up after what happened?" Another whispered. I never gave them a rehearsed answer. I gave them the truth. "You don't always get to pick the battles," I said, "but you get to decide who you become in the middle of them." Some nodded, others just stood quietly, letting the words settle. But I saw it in their eyes. They were listening. One afternoon, I found myself walking past the same boardroom where the Kingswell deal had been signed. The room was empty now, just chairs and glass and the echo of something that used to feel like war. I paused at the doorway, remembering the panic, the betrayal. The coffee had gone cold on my counter, the silence of being erased, and then the power of standing up. Not by shouting, but by knowing who I was and refusing to hand that over. At that moment, I realized something. The most important turning point in this story wasn't when I walked back in. It was when I walked out, head high, hand steady, no begging, no breakdown. Because that was the moment I chose self-worth over survival. And I knew in every bone of my body that no one, not even the boss's son, was ever going to take that from me again.